She and my brother offered to pay for my treatment. The following Monday, I called Dr. Susan Mendelson. The first time I talked to Dr. Susie, I tearfully, and I know you can't imagine that, but I tearfully told her that I was 52 years old and facing my first hip replacement. At that, she made an opening in her very tight schedule for me. My daughter went to the appointment with me, and it was a good thing. Had my daughter not been there, I would have run. I would have not gone in. But as thin as I was from the compulsive eating, I lost 12 more pounds from 2009 to 2010. I weighed less than 120 pounds. I'm 5 feet 10 inches tall, and I wore a size 2. Dr. Susie was talking about models. My measurements were about what a model's were, and it was disgusting. It was not a pretty sight. Dr. Susie had a lot of work to do. Now that this disease was out in the open, we acknowledged that my niece and I were not the only anorexics in our family. My mother, who passed away in 1990, was also anorexic. Dr. Susie had talked about the family portion of this disease. We are living proof. I was the 2nd generation. My dear niece was the 3rd generation. Truly, this disease is our family nightmare. I was making some progress towards becoming a little bit healthier, yet my body was in tremendous pain. It was time for me to have my hip replaced. I had the first hip replacement surgery on July 20th, 2010. My out-of-pocket expenses for this surgery was $5,000. The right side of my body now felt wonderful. I started gaining some weight. My head was in a better place than it had been in years, and everyone noticed the difference in me. One friend told me how wonderful I looked, and I very excitedly told her, don't tell Dr. Susie or Nikki, I told her I gained 15 pounds. Her demeanor changed instantly. She said, make sure you don't gain too much weight. Well, earlier in my treatment, this comment may have sent me into a tailspin, but where I am now, I took this as a great compliment. I thought, gosh, maybe something's working here. She told me how wonderful I look until I told her that I gained weight. People cannot handle that gaining weight can be a good thing, a life-saving thing in my case. Although the right side of my body felt better, the left side of my body was deteriorating very quickly. My surgeon demands patients wait at least 6 months before undergoing a second hip replacement. But my hip was getting so bad so fast, he needed to replace the second hip as soon as possible. This was in October. To accommodate my employer, I chose to have the second surgery as late in December as possible. So December 16th, 2010, I had my second hip replacement. I had 2 major surgeries in less than 5 months. I met my deductible with the first hip replacement, so this did not cost me any more money, but my employer's health plan paid for 2 hip replacement surgeries last year at a cost of $54,000. I will not be surprised when my employer's medical premiums increase this year. My out-of-pocket medical expenses from 2005 through 2010 were $19,900. And I wonder why I have money problems. That's just one of my problems. The cost to be thin was much more than the almost $20,000 that I paid. More than the money, I do not want to pass the family anorexia to my dear Lucy or any other grandchild, grandniece, or grandnephew I may have. We do not want a 4th generation to suffer from anorexia. The toll of ED was not just physical and financial. Even more devastating and destructive was the obsession of ED. I had to walk. I had to walk in the heat, the cold, the rain, the snow, the lightning, the wind. The weather was never an obstacle for me. A normal person would not go walking when the sky was black as night. A normal person would not go walking when the wind was howling at 30 miles per hour. But I was far from normal. As soon as I woke up each day, I was planning what time and how far I would walk that night. Friends called me to do something after work. I would not go. I had to walk. I isolated myself because of this compulsion to walk. Everyone talked about my dedication. It was not dedication. It was Ed telling me I had to walk. I had to go out when no one else dared. Ed told me the only reason people liked me or noticed me was because I walked. I didn't let anything stand in my way. Ed saw to it. My obsessive compulsive behavior wasn't exclusive to my walking. I have 2 wonderful children, and I couldn't just be their mother. I had to be a supermom. While they were both away at college, my job was eliminated. I was divorced and putting them through college on my own. What was I going to do now? I ended up working a full-time job and a part-time job. I made less money than I did at my previous job, so I started living off a credit card. You see, Ed doesn't take over one part of your brain. Ed consumes your entire life. Ed makes you do very destructive things in all aspects of your life. Okay, I was working 65 or more hours per week, walking 40 or more miles a week. I walked at 5 a.m. or 10 p.m., but I had to get my walk in. I slept 3 or 3.5 hours a night. I looked like the walking dead. Needless to say, I was sick quite often. But nothing, and I mean nothing, stopped me from this destructive behavior. I began joking to people that I was crazy, but I had no idea how to stop this behavior. I did not stop until my body was so damaged I could not walk. My tendon tore 4 miles from my home. I knew people all along my walk route. I would not give in and ask one of them to drive me home. I limped home listening to Ed tell me I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't dedicated enough, I wasn't thin enough. Dr. Susie and I are working on why I let Ed tell me these things. And Dr. Susie is very worried that now that my body feels better with my 2 new hips, I will once again start exercising excessively and Ed will take over. Honestly, I have to say I'm a little worried about this as well. I pray that by remembering the physical pain I went through, the financial disaster that I'm still living through caused by Ed, and most importantly, the thought of staying healthy for my dear Lucy and my dear niece Leah, I vow never to let Ed take over again. Lucy gave me a book for Mother's Day. The title of the book is Why I Love Grandma. And you have to bear with me here because Dr. Susie hasn't cured my vanity yet. In my case...
That's not a miracle. Come on, Sandy.
In my case, the title of the book is Why I Love Mimi. A quote from the book is, I love Mimi because she helps me learn from my mistakes. I hope Lucy can say, I love Mimi because she learned from her mistakes. Through therapy, nutritional education, prayers of family, friends, and the hard work of Dr. Susie and Nikki, my nutritionist, my condition is greatly improved. I am forever grateful to my daughter and son, my niece, my brother and sister-in-law for having the courage to confront me and to pay for my treatment. To Lucy for making me realize I cannot pass this disease to a 4th generation. To my father and my sister and the rest of my wonderful family for their love and support. To my dear friends, especially Janice, for always picking me up when I needed to be. I will be 53 years old on Monday with 2 new hips. Anorexia is not just a disease that affects teenage girls. There are many 50 and 60-year-old men and women that have suffered for decades from this disease. Please help help Dr. Susie educate your daughters, sons, husbands, wives, family, and friends about the deadly disease of anorexia. You can do this by opening your wallets to support the education. The price I paid to be thin was not worth it. My family has endured enough pain for 3 generations. Please help us make sure a 4th generation does not know the nightmare of anorexia.